And so then I thought, I want to go to Hollywood, because I couldn't make movies in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Nobody was interested. Nobody would dedicate themselves to it. It's lots of work. And so then I put an advertisement in the Variety looking for a director.
The best way to find a director for a movie.
This is in the early 1981 or two, and it's before fax machines even. Forget email. I got 1,000 envelopes back from one small ad in Variety. And so I went out and I started meeting all these people. I started making 6 meetings a day. I'd go to LA for 1 week, I'd have 6 meetings a day, and I started meeting people. And I still know people from what I met out there. And when I went to LA at first, I was very scared. I was, oh my God, it's the big city, it's Hollywood, it's terrible, you know. And then once I got there, I thought, no, this is where all the people like me went. All the people from around the country or the world that love movies, they can't make them at home, they all go to LA. And so when you get there, you don't feel at all out of place. You feel completely comfortable because you keep meeting people like yourself, whereas where you're living, you don't meet them.
Are there any famous names that you met? Thanks to that ad, you know.
I'm trying to think of.
I think you mentioned Dick Miller or something.
Oh well, I met Dick Miller, yeah, but I never worked with him. He was the first one I met. Yeah, he was the first one I met. Ron Underwood, I remember meeting him, and the S.S. Wilson, the guys that wrote Short Circuit. Ron Underwood ended up directing some. I think he directed Mighty Joe Young or something. I met many people that I kept in touch with. Once I went out to LA, I was working on a script with with my favorite comic book artist at that time, who was Kim Deitch, who was I loved underground comic books. And so I wanted to make a movie about one of his characters called Miles Mycroft, a psychic detective. So I went to Berkeley where he lived, and I met him, and I brought him to North Carolina where I lived, and he actually stayed in my store. I had an art supply store. And we worked on a script based on his comics. And we didn't know anything. So he made the script in pictures. He made the drawings for the script. We were crazy. We had no idea what we were doing. And so then I went out to Hollywood and I met some people there. I met a guy named Bob Greenberg who helped me tremendously. And I met Charlie Band, who was this guy who made all these genre movies under the name of Empire Pictures. And he was really ahead of his time, but unfortunately was kind of ethically challenged, we might say.
Really?
Yeah, so it was not particularly a great experience, and it ended up in lawsuits, but this is typical of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And we ended up, so eventually I realized I wasn't going to get my movie made with anybody else. So I took all the money I had and I borrowed money from every friend I could get back in North Carolina. And I decided to make a movie and a feature, pay for it myself. And in this case, Bob Greenberg was from Chicago. I was looking for a director because after having directed most of my student films, so-called, I realized I didn't know what I was doing. And so I needed somebody that did. So as a producer, you see, you only have to hire the people who have gone to school, who know what they're doing. The producer doesn't have to do anything. So that's how I learned, was by hiring people and watching them. And Bob Greenberg said that he knew a theater director who I would get along with well. So I flew out to Chicago. I think it was in the November of 1983. I met Stuart Gordon and saw the theatrical plays he put on. And I really liked him immediately, and we said, okay, let's do a movie. And we'll do a horror movie. He said, I have this idea to make Herbert West Re-Animator, Lovecraft stories. Yeah. He'd written a script already for a TV show along with the writers William Norris and Dennis Paoli. I loved the idea, but I said, I'm not interested in TV, I want to make a movie. So I bought an option because I got some books that showed you how to do the contracts. So I figured that out, I wrote up contracts, I made a deal, and I bought an option, and we went forward developing the script into a feature film script. In the meantime, I was also at the same time developing a comedy script with this director from New York. And so as I went forward with both of the scripts, finally I thought, well, if I'm going to have to risk my family's entire future, by that time I had 2 children, and I moved them out to LA. And I thought, I better go with horror.
Really?
Because I understand it more. I love comedy, but what if it's
you
not...
love horror more.
Well, what if it's not funny? What if comedy is not funny? And I do love, perhaps, horror more. But, you know, I thought with horror, at least you can make it gross and sexy, and there's an audience.
I mean, you made a lot of horror movies, but you also made one classic comedy, you know. We were involved in it, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah. So. Well, that's a fantastic film also.
Yeah,
it's a fantasy. It just is a different, you could make that as a horror movie. That was done as a family film.
That was a concert this
The concept was to make it for Disney. Yes.
Oh.
The concept was to make it for our children. Stuart and I. We were having a barbecue. We said, we both had children. We said, let's make a movie for our children. Because they can't watch this stuff that we make.
And Society, your first movie, is that the product of your hippie anger, or?
No, that's actually was a script that was written by it was written by Woody Keith and Rick Fry, and Woody Keith is actually the main character, kind of, and he's a paranoid Beverly Hills kid.
Really?
And so he had all this paranoia, and in fact, I had been working for a year with Dan O'Bannon on a film called The Men, about a woman who discovers that all men are aliens, and it had this remarkable paranoid feeling to it. And so when that project collapsed, I felt empty. And then Rick Fry showed me this script that he had with Woody Keith called Society. And I saw it, and I saw the same kind of paranoia in there.
Yeah.
But we had to work quite a bit on it. At that time, it was basically a blood sacrifice. They were killing the kids and drinking
like,
the blood.
Yeah, the classic stuff.
Yeah. This wasn't something I like more fantastics.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, no, what would I like to see? So I imagined, I'd like to see flesh melding together. So let's make it that. And so what I did is I interpreted his story. I interpreted his with him, and we rewrote it many times to make it, to bring out certain themes. One theme that I thought was already in the story, but he didn't have clear, was the idea of this, what I considered from my hippie days, class struggle. Yeah. This idea that the poor are exploited by the rich. And so then I tried to come up with I looked at it, and when I work on a story or a script, I believe in instinct. I believe in vision, and I believe in inspiration. So when a writer or an artist can give me something that excites me, that's inspired, I don't argue with how ridiculous it might be. I accept that, and then I try to find a logic to it, because I think the logic is only so we can get there. But I want what the idea is. So in this case, this whole idea of the shunting, I had to come up with a logic for it. And then the whole idea that the rich, or the blue bloods, were really, really different from the common people. I tried to find a kind of an evolutionary excuse for it, kind of a rationale. So I took from the beginning, I said, okay, this is the reality. They're actually almost a different species. So how do we get there? And so from there I thought, okay, back in caveman times, there was some kind of amoeba or some kind of parasite that got into some people and took over their bodies and made it had to live off of their own form, kind of like the Thing or something. And so it made them able to dominate the others. Until then, there wasn't this feeling of domination. So this is what gave them the ability to dominate, and they become the chief.